All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Scott Thompson, and we are here for Stock Investing for Beginners. Today, we are relaunching our lesson 1 through 8 series. Give a shout out to Simone and Greg and Jay Richardson and Eva and uh, Robert and everybody else that's here today. Rojo, Jim, thank you for being here with me today. This is for at least everybody names I see. This is for your children or your grandchildren. What we're going to cover today hopefully gets you excited about investing. So I want to jump right in and get started with this. Today's topic is why do we invest or why do we want to invest? And so before we get started, let me remind everybody our presentation today is for educational purposes only. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as the sole means of investment research. We are using the Thinkorswim paper money software, and there are some significant differences between the paper money and the real or live account. We talk about stop losses quite frequently in this webcast, so there's no guarantee that execution of a stop order will be at or near the stop price. And then also, one of the coolest things that's now available on the Thinkorswim Paper Money platform is doing fractional shares. So I wanted to show you that today. But be aware that there's some special risk inherent with fractional shares. Not all stocks trade in fractional shares, and they may not be eligible to, move to different accounts and so on. So be aware of that. And then, as always, all investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Here's our lesson lineup that we're going to be looking at over the next 8 weeks. Lesson number 1 is why we invest. Number 2, how do we invest in the stock market? Number 3, investor psychology. Number 4, planning our trade and trading our plan. 5, 6, 7, how, what to buy, when to buy, how much to buy, and then finally managing our portfolio, which we've actually spent a lot of time on the last several months using a plan that I gave everybody actually a year ago. We're over a year into this stock investing for beginners webcast, but today's lesson is why invest. And so we are going to jump right in. Our agenda today is to talk about why people invest. How do people build wealth through investing? And then I'll walk you through what to get started today. I'm going to share right off the bat a favorite quote of mine. This is from Chuck Schwab. He said, "Why be an owner in a company? Essentially, it gives you a piece of the action, what the company is doing. In a very small amount of money, you can buy 100 shares." Now, when Chuck first started, they didn't have fractional shares. So you can start with a whole lot less money than back when this quote was given. But you can buy 100 shares of a company or 1 share or even less than 1 share nowadays. Take all the benefits of that company growing over 1 year, 2 year, 10 years, 20 years. And our investment works hard for us morning, noon, and night. And while we go about our own profession, that's the great efficiency we have about investing. One of the coolest things is that we can do our own thing while our money's working for us. Um, Here's just an example. This is a hypothetical example here. In this example, Maria and Anna each invested $3,000 every year on January 1st for 10 years. Now, they didn't care what the market was doing, whether it was a bear market, which means down, or whether it was a bull market, which means up. They just invested that money every single year. The difference is, though, is Maria started 20 years ago and Anna started 10 years ago. And the difference, that 10 years, is about $120,000 of the money just being in the market. And so, again, this is an example where the dividends were reinvested. It also assumes that the company continued to pay dividends, which may or may not happen. But one of the things that I want you to take away from this is time is your greatest asset. I wish somebody told me this when I was 16 or 17 or 18, when I got out of high school or when I got out of college. But this compounding, the time in the market is one of the greatest things that you have working for you as a new investor. Now, how do that people actually build wealth, or how does putting money in the market build wealth for someone? And this is a really great quote of how that kind of happens. Companies are made to grow. So the board of directors always wants the company to grow. Management comes up with a growth plan every single year. If they don't, guess what happens? The CEO gets fired. Boards want companies to grow, and so do the shareholders, who are the people that buy those shares in the company. They are made to grow. That's what they are. And that is what the whole secret is behind investing. These companies, successful companies, keep growing, and so does the possibility of their stock price. Now, I do want to point out that not all stocks grow, not all companies are successful, but that's the purpose of a company, is to grow. And so, what's that really break down to? How do people build wealth through investing? Well, you can buy stocks, you can buy what's called a mutual fund, or you can buy what's called an exchange traded fund or an ETF. And there's two primary ways that we build wealth through those different assets, and that's one by price appreciation, and that's kind of what we all hear, right? Buy when prices are low, sell when prices are high. And sometimes if the stock grows and grows and grows and grows, then they do what's called a stock split, which we're going to talk about here as an example in just a minute. And then another way is by dividend payments. Dividends are periodic distributions of corporate profits to the shareholders. Here's another little detail on what a dividend is: portion of the company's earnings that can be distributed to shareholders. It's usually in cash. Some companies, though, will pay stock as dividend or additional shares, and you may have heard of a stock split, like a 2-for-1 split or a 3-for-1 split, or even more. Recently, over the last couple of years, we've had 7-for-1s and 10-for-1 splits. But do remember, not all companies pay dividends, and the dividend amount can change or just be completely eliminated. All right. So that's where that comes from for ways of building wealth. Now, how does a stock split work? Now, I'm going to have you guys do some math with me. When I went through this on my own a while ago, I was blown away of the impact that buying a company that's growing can have. Now, this chart is a snapshot of where the stock price was in the past. But this company is called Apple. It's not a recommendation, but I want you guys to do the math with me here. So December 12th, 1980, Apple had their IPO, which is an initial public offering, and they closed for about $22 per share. Now, breaking that down into terms that maybe our current youth may understand, is that's 4 coffees. Okay, if you go to Starbucks and get a latte or whatever you get, that's like 4 of them, right? And so if you ignored buying coffee that week and put it into an IPO, and I know the coffee price in 1980 would have been very different, but the price was $22. Now, let's take a look at what Apple did and the dates they did this on. Now, I want you guys to keep track here and see what the initial 1 share would have turned into. That's what we're going to do here together. All right. So June 16th, 1987, the stock split 2-for-1. So let's kind of start doing the math together. If I had 1 share and it splits 2-for-1, how many shares do I have? Well, 2. All right. Then they split again on the 21st of June, 2000. So about 13 years later, they split 2-for-1. So if we had 2 shares and they split 2-for-1, how many do we have? Well, 4 shares, right? Then they split again, February 28th, 2005, and they split 2-for-1. And I'm not going to do the math anymore because it's late in the afternoon and my head hurts, but I'll let you go do that. Then on June 9th, 2014, some of you may remember this, Apple split 7-for-1. So if we had 1 share, we'd end up with 7. If we had 10 shares, we'd end up with 70, right? So I've thrown some numbers at you here, probably got you all messed up. And then the last split they had was on August 31st of 2020. They split 4-for-1. So the question is, if you had 1 share at $22 back in 1980, how many shares did you end up with? All right. I'll give you a second to think about that. And here we go. Here's the math. 1 share at 22. How many shares today? Everybody get this? Did you get the numbers? 1 share turned into 224 shares. I think we had 56 shares going into that 4-for-1 split. And so when I took this snapshot, again, we're talking about how do people build wealth? Well, if the company grows and you own that company over time, this is what happened with Apple. Now, again, not all companies grow, and not all stock splits are successful, and not all stock splits keep growing. But in this case, Apple's close on the 6th of June last year was 203. I think they closed around 230 or so today. So one one $22 share in 1980. What's that? 45 years later. So a long time, right? But that turned into 224 shares worth $45,000 45 years later. And so, this is an example of a company that's grown, but not all companies do that. Not all companies split and things like that. But I wanted to show this illustration of how a growing company will sometimes split their stock price or, split their stock and give us 2 shares for each one that we had and so on. But it's an interesting thing to think about. On every dollar that you spend, that's money that you can't invest somewhere else. And so I want you to take that away. All right. That's one of the big takeaways from today. Now, people ask, well, when should I get started? All right. This is another big takeaway from our class today. And I'll just read what Chuck says. So, so many people came to me and asked, is this a good time to invest, Chuck? And I say it's always a good time to invest. Just get started. I can't pick the lowest day. I can't even pick the highest day. I just have to pick a day that's comfortable for me and go in and do it. The news might be a little bad that particular day. That's okay. The market might be down. It might be a perfect time to get yourself started and rolling. Then be prepared to add to it over your career. So that's what, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, probably 20 years ago. When's the best time to start investing? Obviously April, December of 1980 with Apple, but the next best time is now. And I'm going to show you some different ways to get started with this. But the very first thing to do is start to make a plan. And how much does it cost to get started? Zero. All right. Now you're probably thinking, well, I can't invest zero. Well, to get started, zero means that you can start investing or pretending to invest using the paper money platform. All right. Or you can start saving. You can put some money aside every single day, every single week, every single month, and make that jump into the investing world. It starts with saving today. And of course, in order to invest, you have to have a brokerage account, which I'm going to show you here, a page on Schwab that helps you decide which one to do. And then you can start practicing today using the paper money platform. So what I want to do here is I want to go over to the schwab.com page. And on schwab.com, if you scroll down a little bit, it'll give you some different types of accounts. We'll talk more about these in the coming weeks of what these different accounts do. But you can click on these different buttons and do some research on which account will work best for you. And then open an account. You can just click right there, open an account. You can either send a check or you can wire some money in. But that's basically some different accounts that you can have. Now, after you open the account, what I would tell you to do is go to the Thinkorswim page. I'm going to chat this into the or chat this in here on the chat so you can see it. But after you open your account, you'll get an account number, and then you can go download Thinkorswim. And that's just go to schwab.com/trading/Thinkorswim and then log in to download Thinkorswim. And when you do that, then you'll get a little login screen that looks like this. Now, this is very important. So if you're not paying attention, come back for just a moment here. If you're doing dishes or whatever, come back, look at the screen a minute. Down here at the bottom, this is very important. You can click on live trading or you can click on paper money. Now, paper money has a different color logo here at the top. Did you see that? Live trading has this blue logo. Paper money has kind of this, orange or tan or golden or whatever color you think that is there. So you can do that when you log in. You can't toggle back and forth on the desktop version of this. So, when you log into paper money, then you're going to pull up a screen that looks somewhat like this. And this is also important. If you're in paper money at the top left of the screen, it'll say PM for paper money simulated trading. If you don't see that up there, then you're probably in your live account. And I know people who thought they were in the paper money and doing some trading, and they were getting excited about it, and maybe buying a few more shares than they normally would, and they ended up being in their live account. So make sure you see that paper money simulated trading up there at the top. All right. So that is kind of how to get started. Go to schwab.com, look at the different accounts, download thinkorswim, log into thinkorswim, and then that'll put you over here. Now, this particular chart that I have up, I wanted to show you how you can get started with just very little bit of money. It used to take a lot more money to get started, but obviously you can start with zero and do paper money. But if you have $1 laying around and you save about 5 or more of those, then you can start actually trading with the fractional shares that I mentioned. So let me show you just this chart that I've got. This is Morgan Stanley over here, but this code, which I chatted in, if you scroll up to the top of the chat, you can see this. It's also in the description of this webcast if you're listening to the archive. But if you just copy, either you can copy the whole URL there, or you can just copy the last, what is it, 7 or 8 or 9 digits there. And I'm going to do a Control C. I'm going to show you how to load this and then how to find it, okay? Because this chart that we have is kind of a cool chart. It's special, and it has different things on it that I'll talk about in a second. And then we'll do some example trades, and then it'll be done for today. All right? So once you copy that symbol down, go over here to the Setup, click Setup, go to Open Shared Item, and then put your cursor in there and do Control V like Victor if you're on a PC, and import or copy that URL, that code in there. Click Preview, and I've called this the 2 green arrow chart with the symbol box and time frame. That will put this big gold, grayish box up there with the stock symbol, and 6M stands for 6 month, 1 day. All right. And then what I like to do is I like to click on this Open Shared Item and then click Import. And then what happens is it pulls up a separate screen. It loads that chart up. And this is on SMCI right now. But what I want to do at this point is make sure I save this study set. And I don't know if this is what you have to do every time. It's what I've always done, so I don't really know any different. But like after I open that up, I like to go up here to Studies and then click Save Study Set. And then you can either name that, whatever you want to name it. You could call it the 2 green arrows study set, if that's what you want to call it, or you could say with, symbol box, whatever you want to name it, but something that you can remember. Click Save. And then like when you go to your default chart, like if I remove all the studies, this is probably what your chart will look like when you first get in there. Maybe a little different, obviously, but if you go over here to Studies and then go to Load Study Set, right there, 2 green arrows with symbol box, you click on that and it'll load all those studies up that we had. All right. So again, if you missed that, just go back and watch the recording. Barb, who's in the chat, and I forgot to give a shout out to Barb. Thanks, Barb, for being there. Barb's got a lot of really great little videos on, how to load scripts up like I just did, and some other great content on candles and things like that in her trade management mini series. So go check that out. All right. So let's go over here now to MS. And what I wanted to show you, this is a new feature on thinkorswim, a really fun one to play around with, is to go in and, this is stock investing for beginners. When I was in high school, I didn't have a lot of money to invest. So I didn't know anything about investing, honestly. But, it was interesting to me that my best friend had some shares, and he had partial shares in his dad's company. And he showed me those every quarter or so. He'd say, I've got 13.1267 shares of the company. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. Let's go play baseball or whatever it was. But check this out. Now, I'm going to quickly go over this chart because we'll talk more about this in the lessons. But this particular chart is the study set and the chart that we've been using to practice trading over the last year, and that we're going to continue to use over the coming year. And I'm going to add some features to it after we're done with this 8 lesson series. But let me just describe what's on the chart so you guys know what we're looking at. So the green line on the chart is a 50 period or 50 day in this case, because we're on a day chart. Let me change my drawing tool to this arrow so it's a little easier to see stuff. But we're on a 6-month chart, so that's 6 months in time, and every bar or candle here represent 1 day of trading. So in this particular case, this is a 50-day simple moving average. This purple dashed line is a 50-period simple moving average envelope that's set 1% below the 50-period moving average. And we're generally using that for our stop loss amount. Down here below, we have what's called a MACD histogram. It's more of a momentum indicator. When it's rising, generally prices are rising. When it's falling, prices are typically slowing down a little bit or going down. And then you can also see they have these what's called breakout signals. Now, if you imported that code that I gave you, it has all of this on the chart already. But when the price is above the moving average, you're going to get a green arrow. So that happened there on the 8th. Before the 8th, the price was below that moving average. It went above the moving average, and that's what generates that green arrow. And it stays green until it turns red. And it doesn't turn red until it goes back below the moving average, which happened back here in time on, it looks like the 5th of February. All right. The MACD gives these red and green arrows, as it crosses what we call the zero line, which is no line there, but you can kind of see when it changes colors from green to red or red to green. That's what generate those arrows. And our investing plan is basically just if there's 2 green arrows and the moving average is rising, we consider that a valid buy signal. And so yesterday, you can see here on MS, I went in and in paper money, I'll show you the order here in a second, but in the paper money, I wanted to see, number one, if it worked, but I bought $50 worth of MS. Now, MS costs $220. So how can I only buy $50 worth? Well, that's the really cool thing is you can actually you can do this a couple different ways. You can go to the trade page. And if we type in MS to buy any shares, check this out. I'll do this a couple times so you can follow along or see it a couple times. But if you want to buy anything on Thinkorswim, you just click on the ask price and that'll put an order here at the bottom. Then over here on the quantity side, if you click this little stack of what I consider like cue balls, you click that once, it goes to percent. Click it again, it goes to dollar. And I said I bought $50 worth. So I just put in $50 enter. And then I came over here and I hit confirm and send. And this is what the order looks like. It says buy $50 of MS at, whatever price we put in. And I bought $50. So let me show you this here a second. So you click on send, and then what happens is this. And let me go over here, change this over to there. So on the monitor tab, go to account statement. So you can see right here, 16 yesterday, $50 to open, and I ended up buying 0.2268 shares of MS. And that'll show up here on your activity and positions page. And that's what I have right there. I spent $50, but now it's worth $51.02. So I'm up $1.01 on that particular trade. But if I click on the P&L open, you can actually see the order and some other information there. I did the same thing on Intel. So let's go through the process again. If I save $1 every single day for 5 days, and at the end of the week I have $5, and on Monday I'm going to go buy something. I'm going to spend $5 on something. Then that's kind of what I simulated here on Intel. Intel's a $121 stock. You used to not be able to buy $5 worth of this, but now we can. So let me show you another way you can do this. I can go in here, right click, I can do a buy. Click on buy, and that'll just bring up an order for me. And it assumes 1 share. So if I do it this way, then I need to go edit the share, which will bring up that order window again. And so how do I change from like 1 full share to a dollar amount? Well, I click on this little, cue ball stack here, once for percent, twice for dollar. And now I just want to buy $5. So I put $5 enter, and I hit confirm and send. The market's closed right now, is why I'm not sending these, because they would be good for tomorrow, but I just wanted to show you this process and then what I've done. All right. And I do see some comments. I'll come back and look at those in just a moment. All right, so buy $5 of Intel, and I have a group created, just getting started. Do you have $5? And so we're putting that in that group. We click send order. And if the market were open, then it would buy some Intel for me. And let me show you my Intel order. So I'm going to go up here, INTC. I actually did this one today. So I did that same process. I clicked on Intel. I clicked on the ask price. I changed my order to $5. I sent the order off, and then the order filled. And now I own 0.0412 shares of Intel. And if I go to my activity and positions page, I can see right here, there's my quantity. And right now it's down a penny, or looks like actually maybe up 2 cents. So they, as they round down and up, they still can't maybe get exactly $5 on those, but I'm up 2 cents a share on that one. And then we did the same thing on CVS. So let me go ahead and show you that one, and then I'll come back and answer the questions. All right. So CVS here. Now this one has the green arrows, but they're a little bit older. You see that? The MACD turned green about 7-8 days ago. But if we thought, the lines on the chart here, for those of you that are aware, this is where I think support and resistance lines were on CVS. The stock broke that 98.40 resistance, hit a new high, and it's pulling back a little bit. And in the technical world, we call that a short-term bull flag forming up. Old resistance, in this case, may become new support. So I placed an order on this one today to buy $5 worth of CVS. Now, I'm going to go back to the trade page like we did the first example. We click on trade, type in the right symbol, CVS. Okay, let's shrink that down. In order to buy the stock, what do I do on Thinkorswim? Well, I just click on the ask price. How do I change this from one full share to a dollar amount? I click on the little icon here once for percent, twice for dollar. And if I had $5 to put into Intel or CVS, I do 5.00, enter, hit confirm and send, then review my order, and I can buy $5 worth of CVS. If I have a group I want to put that in, I just make that group known here. And then I click send order, and it sends that order off. And if the market's open, then even in the paper money, it takes about 3-4 seconds to fill. So not very long, but it doesn't happen instantaneously, which is probably what would happen in a live account. But in the paper money, a little bit delayed, send that order off. And we did that on CVS, and I bought 0.05 shares, about $5 worth. We are losing about 4 cents on this one. So not every stock goes up, of course. We hope it does. But what we do is we get into position sizing. We'll talk about more of that later on. But this one here, let me go to my account statement, and I type in CVS, and we can see the order here. CVS that I did today, $5, bought 0.05 shares of that one. All right. So that is what I wanted to show you today. Number one, about being able to jump in and do these orders. So before we kind of wrap up for today, let me go ahead and scroll back through to see if there's some questions. Now, Barb does a great job of answering the questions in the chat. What I like to do is I like to take all of those questions that came through on the chat and then post them on the recording. And let me show you where that'll be. So after you've been listening here, if you go to playlists, and again, we've been doing this class for about a year now, so we have quite a few videos, but right here, Stock Investing for Beginners, view full playlist, and we're relaunching our lesson 1 through 8. But what I want to show you is like last week we did this class, and if I click on that class, I'll pause it so it doesn't play. But if you come down here, let me do this. There you go. If you come down to the bottom, oh, that's not doing it. Over here on the left side, you can see the answers to the questions, like question from the live webcast. Would it be reasonable to add other indicators? And I'll post those and re-answer them there too. All right. So let's go back over here to our Thinkorswim and other questions that may have come up. Let's see. So JJ brings up an interesting question. Says, for investing, if you buy at the top, how much can you profit versus if you got in low? Well, so here's the idea. I think you may be referring back to that quote that we had, right? When should I get started? One of the challenges about getting started is just that fact of getting started. Everybody wants to buy when the stock is low. Okay? Many years, and I've asked this question of the internet. There was a year where the market was made 77 new highs throughout the year. Okay. So one of those 77 days, you would have looked at the market and said, I can't buy this. It's too high. Right. And so the challenge is not trying to find the bottom. Where is the bottom? There's companies that have gone out of business that looked probably like they were a great value, and then they kept going down, and then they went down to zero. So as challenging as that comment is that Chuck made about, starting today, who knows if today's the highest high? Who knows if today's the lowest low? If you can't overcome that feeling, the chances of you getting started are very low. You'll always be looking for something better. Okay. Now, we do teach risk management in these future sessions, so that will help maybe alleviate some of those concerns, because guess what? There are not any perfect buy signals and there's not any perfect entry opportunity. All right. Every single investment can be a losing trade. Therefore, we need to have some risk management ideas when we'll talk about those in the future. All right. So I'm glad you brought that up. Let's see. Some other questions here. Okay, that looks like maybe the only one. Oh, Scott said, can you please share the code you created for us? Yeah. So over here again, this is in the chat already, but let me repost it. This is our charting code. And I just need to point out that the code is not guaranteed for accuracy or time. There can be some challenges with those. So be aware of that. All right. Well, again, hopefully this was helpful for you to go through some of this. Again, this is just our getting started, why invest. Let me wrap up our session today. Why do people invest? To participate in the growth of a company. How do they build wealth? Well, if the company grows, that wealth increases over time. You can get started today. That's our big takeaway. You can start by trading some paper money. You can start by creating a savings plan. And then next week we'll talk about, how to actually get started and how to invest. And we'll take the next step. All right. Well, hopefully that's helpful for you, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Have a great, great day. We'll see you next time. See ya.